Hey, welcome back into Weekend Joe, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura, Munganess Alton Toyota here on ClaibsOnline.com. And let's talk a little football. Head on out to Denver from KOA. Good friend Brandon Krisztal joining us. Brandon, how are you?
Good, Joe. It's been a fun week here in the Mile High City, as you can imagine.
I was going to say it just seems like every few years now, John Elway's kind of the way he runs that team is just every few years you pick up a future Hall of Fame quarterback, right?
Yeah, and honestly, this time around, you have to give George Payton a little more credit because he's running the day-to-day, but John Elway's the guy that hired him, and John's still around as a special consultant. And they took Russ to Elway's after the deal was not done because it can't officially be done until the new league year starts, but he came in town for a physical the day of the trade. And then they went and had dinner at Elway's. And I'm not sure. I don't know if John was with them. Nonetheless, it's in his steakhouse. John's influence, of course, looms large in the Mile High City. But the organization had John at the end of his career. He won a Super Bowl. They had Peyton Manning at the end of his career in his mid to late 30s. He won a Super Bowl. Now you get Russell Wilson, 33. He'll be 34 just after Thanksgiving. Will he win a Super Bowl? The Broncos certainly hope so. Broncos country is excited, though, about that prospect.
So Elway has a steakhouse out there, and Peyton just has
four of them. He has four of them.
And Peyton just has all the Papa Johns, right? Is that how that works?
Well, Peyton had all the Papa Johns.
Oh, okay.
And while there's nothing nefarious that he's been accused of, he did sell all of them before they quit being the official football or pizza partner of the NFL. And literally months before the controversy went down with Papa John. So maybe his pal Papa John let him know. And look, now Shaq is their chairman of the board, and I think they do pretty well. But Peyton sold all of his pretty shortly before all that controversy.
So you knew going into this offseason that the Broncos' number one target was going to be that quarterback position. Drew Lock was not working out there in Denver to the way that you guys wanted him to. And you heard kind of the rumblings of Russell Wilson, but it did seem like Aaron Rodgers was the more likely name to go there. So was there a falling out with the Aaron Rodgers situation, or did that fall apart, or did they choose Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers in the long run?
Well, I think maybe all of the above, because some people have tried to spin it that Russ was always plan A, but I talked to people I trust, and they told me that they were definitely doing their due diligence and trying to put together a package in case Aaron were available. And I think for two main reasons: he's a back-to-back MVP, and the other is his comfort level with Nathaniel Hackett. Now, you likely weren't going to have him as long. Maybe they play the exact same amount of time from here on out, but Aaron's 6 years older. So conventional thinking is you wouldn't have him as long as you're going to have Russ. You also didn't know if Russell would be available, but then doing a little more digging, it turns out that both players were high on the Broncos list, obviously, and that George Payton has been in the office for months and certainly at home, and I'm sure everywhere else in between, trying to work out scenarios where both players could end up here. And then when it obviously came together that Aaron wasn't going to leave Green Bay, the new deal's coming. He was just at David Bakhtiari's wedding. I think that may have factored into it, because people that I talked to that I trust said that Aaron really was conflicted, that it was 50-50. And those are people close to Aaron that I talked to Super Bowl week, that I talked to at the Combine as well. And so the 50-50 report that Ian Rappaport had last Saturday during the Combine, I had said that on Tuesday on Fox Sports Radio. I was working as their Combine correspondent. I said it on Tuesday. I said it again Thursday and Friday, that I was hearing from people I trusted that Aaron was 50-50. I think David Bakhtiari's wedding really did sway him a little bit, but Russell Wilson, the Seahawks knew they were going to move on. It was just a question of when, right? You have to rip the Band-Aid off, and they knew Russ wanted to move on. And so it also turns out that Russ has been doing his due diligence, and I think that may have been part of why Von Miller posted what he posted on Monday, that he wanted to come back to Denver, because I think Russ called him to ask about Denver, and I think he called a couple of other people as well, is the sense I get talking to people in the know. I wouldn't have been surprised if we find out, or I won't be surprised if we find out, that he called Peyton Manning to ask about life in Denver. And here's the biggest endorsement of Denver, and you've been out here, Joe. You know what a fun city it is. Lots of people have, and certainly love to come go skiing and everything else. Peyton Manning can live literally anywhere in the world, and certainly anywhere in America, with stronger ties in places like Indy, Nashville. His wife owns part of the Memphis Grizzlies. She's from Tennessee. They have a place in Miami at the edge of South Beach. There's lots of places they could live. Obviously, California with all the production company stuff he's doing, outside New York, be near his brother and near that media hub. They chose to stay in Denver when he was done and their kids were just getting into elementary school. He and his wife Ashley, they decided they were staying in the Mile High City. It doesn't mean they'll stay here forever, but the longer he goes without taking a job running a football team or being involved in an ownership group on a daily basis, and maybe he's involved in this new one here. I know it's a really long answer to your question, but the fact that Peyton Manning chose to stay here, I think says enough for people like Russell Wilson to say, okay, Denver must be a pretty special place, because why wouldn't he perhaps be somewhere else if given an option?
No, and that's, you know what? I mean, that sounds similar here in St. Louis. You get a lot of Blues and Cardinals that will come here at the end of their career and retire, and then they stay here in St. Louis and they raise families here in St. Louis, and you get that a lot here. So I'm no way am I comparing Denver to St. Louis. I've been in both cities. I know there's a difference.
No, but you got to use, who you should use as an example is Joe Buck, right? Joe Buck can live anywhere in the world. He has access to private planes. His wife's from Denver. She used to be a Broncos cheerleader a million years ago. She works for ESPN. She can get on a plane, and all of her family's here. And Joe's daughters obviously are grown up. And I was told, because I work with some people that are really close with Michelle and Joe, that after his youngest daughter was out of high school, and I think she's already been in college a couple of years now, that they could move back to Denver, move to LA, move anywhere, and Joe would be fine with it. They just built a new house in St. Louis, and they've got twin boys that aren't even elementary school age yet, that I think are just a little bit older than my kiddo. They're probably about to be 4. And they could live anywhere, and they're choosing to live in St. Louis. I understand Joe has really strong ties there, but there's nothing on a weekly basis that makes them stay there. So it makes sense that people would find Missouri and St. Louis specifically to be a great place to stay and raise a family, even if you don't have strong ties to the area. Joe Buck does have those ties, but still, you get my point.
The only person it seems like that never wanted to be in St. Louis is Stan Kroenke. So it's
yeah, and I think that's a tough pill to swallow. Obviously, there's strong Kroenke ties here with his ownership of 3 pro sports teams in the arena that both the Nuggets and Avs play in, and they're obvious, I guess 4 pro sports teams if you count the lacrosse team. So I don't think Stan's beloved here by any means, especially because the Nuggets and Avs haven't been on Comcast TV for a couple years. But everyone understands the raw deal that St. Louis got when you moved him to LA. But if you weren't from Missouri, aren't from St. Louis, and understand the business side of it, just from a shrewd business standpoint, I think everyone, and you were in LA, you saw that palace, understands why the move was made.
Oh yeah, you get it. It didn't need to go that way. All right, so
it's like when you get broken up, and you're like, yeah, I get why we're breaking up. I just don't have to like it.
Right. All right, hey, take off the reporter hat for a second and put on the fan hat of for the Broncos. If you had to choose between Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers for what the Broncos team looks like right now and what you expect them to look like in 2022, who would you have rather the team ended up with?
Well, it is worth noting, while I have Broncos gear, this is signed by Floyd Little, the Hall of Famer, and I'm going to have all the Broncos Hall of Famers sign it, and then I got a little Peyton Manning action figure and a Broncos Super Bowl 50. All these things are just kind of signed and cool, and a Super Bowl 50 helmet over there, right? But my kids are Broncos fans. I grew up in Dallas. I want the Broncos to do well because I work at the Broncos radio partner, but my week isn't ruined if they lose. Nonetheless, just to take being the reporter out of it and just who's better for Denver all the way around, the answer is Russell Wilson for a million reasons. He may be a bit of a robot and his teammates may not really understand him and all of that, but one, he's bringing Ciara to town, so that's cool. And her 32 million Instagram followers, right? That's a different level of celebrity that even the Broncos aren't used to, maybe except for when Peyton was here, just because of Peyton's celebrity. And so I think that the off the field stuff beyond that, he's a Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers isn't good in the community, but I heard someone from Seattle say that Russ goes to Children's Hospital there in Seattle every Tuesday, does not miss a Tuesday on his off day. When we know there aren't real off days in the NFL for quarterbacks, they still go in and get some work on the playbook or the game plan for next week and kind of jump ahead, but they don't have to be in the building on that off day. He went to Children's Hospital every Tuesday. So I expect that we'll see him at Children's Hospital every Tuesday here in Denver. It's about 25 minutes from the facility. And so I think that's who you're getting, a guy who's a great leader. And while I don't know if he connects with his teammates, they know on Sunday he gives them a chance to win. And the biggest reason it's better to have Russell Wilson, and I'm not just spinning it because he's the guy that they got, is the thing that I talked about earlier. He's 33 and Aaron Rodgers is 39. So if you get him for more than whatever his new contract's about to be, which we think will be 5 or 6 years, but let's say he does want to play till he's 40 or 41 because he didn't really know anything else, and he sticks around that long and you get 8 years out of him, then assuming he plays at the level he's played at for the first decade of his career, where he's gone to 9 Pro Bowls and gone to a couple Super Bowls and won one, never been a league MVP. Does he get that hardware at some point? In this offense with Nathaniel Hackett, he's perfectly suited for it. But just the age thing alone, and then I think some of the lack of look, he has his own, I'm sure, peculiarities, but they aren't on display the way Aaron Rodgers are at times.
Yeah. The you mentioned earlier the Von Miller tweet, or the Von Miller statement that he made about maybe, wanting to come back to Denver, and how much did he know before he said that. Another guy that you would expect to be very much in the know was Jerry Jeudy, the top wide receiver for the Broncos, who on the day of the trade on Tuesday, when the Aaron Rodgers contract news was announced, he kind of gave a sad emoji. And then when the Russell Wilson news was announced, he had a smiling emoji. How much did Jerry Jeudy know? How much did they let the team in on what they were trying to do?
I don't think very much. And I talked to some people in the building that I'm close with, and I was like, when did you know? And they said over the weekend it really started to come together. And they did a good job of keeping this under wraps. If Russell's calling people, that's on Russ, right? He's trying to find out, okay, what's Denver about? And odds are he didn't just do it on Monday or even on Sunday. He's probably heard that this could be a possibility, or trying to just have his ducks in a row in the event that the Broncos made the right offer. And look, he had to waive the no trade clause, so they couldn't send him anywhere. But I think Jerry Jeudy was completely in the dark. I know Shelby Harris, who I do a podcast with, was completely in the dark, and he was involved in the trade and is now a Seattle Seahawk, along with Drew Lock and with Noah Fant, the former first-round tight end from a couple years ago. But I don't think anybody in the building, unless Russ reached out to them directly or indirectly through a third party, knew it. Melvin Gordon's a guy that Russ played with at Wisconsin for that year that he was there. And Melvin Gordon got excited, but Melvin Gordon certainly didn't seem to tip his hand. And I don't know why you would, right? Until a deal of this magnitude is done, because you don't want to be the guy that betrays some sort of trust. I know Melvin Gordon loves it here, so it'll be interesting to see if he comes back on a team-friendly deal, because I think there are other places that'll give him more money. But I think that Russ probably did call Vaughn, and that's why Vaughn probably put that out there. That he then told that he told Justine Anderson that he wanted to let the Rams have a chance to bring him back. I don't think the Rams can really afford him. The Broncos certainly can afford Vaughn more, but that doesn't mean they want to pay him what Vaughn wants. There could be teams out there that want to pay Vaughn top dollar, and I'm not sure the Broncos are that team.
We here in St. Louis, a lot of folks have followed the career of Drew Lock from his days at Mizzou, and then being a first-round drafted quarterback, and it didn't work out for him there in Denver. Why didn't it work out for him?
I'm not sure it's completely Drew's fault, and I'm a big Drew Lock fan, even though he's a Missouri guy and I'm a Kansas guy, and he gives me a hard time every time I'm wearing KU stuff. I mean, he would shout profanities at me, even on Zooms. He would say, "Take that effing thing off," like before the interview started. I was wearing, like, when we were all wearing masks, even on the Zooms, because we were inside the building. He's like, "Brandon, take off that GD mask," or whatever, right? I got that from the field. He'd be on. He's like, "Take off that shirt." I'm like, "I'm sending you one for Christmas." So Drew's a guy I actually got to get to know at the Senior Bowl, and then when the Broncos landed him, I was really excited. And you saw, obviously, some of the flashes his rookie year when he played those final 5 games, and I believe went 4-1 down the stretch, or 3-1, whatever it was. And you saw the talent, and you knew about what he did at Missouri. And you also knew that he was mired in play caller issues, and it wasn't his fault at all. But all but 2 years, and really from his senior year of high school through his second year in the pros, he had a different play caller in 6 of those 7 years, if my math is right, or 7 of 8, whatever that math is. But then the downside of him having Pat Shurmur for 2 years was that he had Pat Shurmur and his lack of creativity and lack of willingness to adjust to what his players do, and just maybe try to follow more trends and take advantage of what Drew's athleticism is. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Seattle with Shane Waldron running that offense, coming from the Sean McVay tree. Is he more creative there? But I think that there's a chance, if he does get on the field and is the starter, and I think he has as good odds as anybody, especially if they don't go quarterback at 9 or end up landing anyone in a trade or via free agency. And the free agency market is really guys like Marcus Mariota's at the top of the list. That Drew's a starter in Seattle and has a chance to thrive because, 1, it's a fresh start. 2, he's got some talent around him, right? You look at Lockett and Metcalf being at the top of the list, and Noah Fant, obviously, in that mix. And then 3, just the chance to know it's his job to lose, not, hey, you're fighting. It was his job to lose his second year. Then he's battling Teddy Bridgewater and what turned out to never even really be a true QB competition, because George Paton, in his mind, I think, had moved on, and certainly Vic Fangio moved on. And so maybe Teddy Bridgewater ends up there, and I think that would be tough for Drew. And that just popped into my head right now. But I'm excited for the chance for Drew to get on the field. And I think some of the things he learned from Teddy was how to be a pro, how to interact with your teammates off the field and after practice, and all this extra little stuff that he was talking about during camp, then early in the year. Then we, because he had to sub in. Teddy got hurt a couple different times, and he's like, oh, I've learned all these different things from Teddy that I can't wait to enact. But I think the Shermer offense limited him. He did a lot better protecting the ball. The problem was he didn't take chances. And I don't know if some of that was being around Teddy a little bit too much, but the talent's there. And so I'm pulling for Drew Lock, and I'd love to see him not only get on track, but exceed in Seattle, excel, and become a Pro Bowl type quarterback. I think it'd be awesome.
Rank the 4 starting quarterbacks in that AFC West.
I still have to put Patrick Mahomes 1, just because of where his game is right now and how talented he is. I love watching him play every Sunday. Aaron Rodgers used to be my favorite quarterback to watch, and is still on a high a high pedestal. But Mahomes is right there. If I'm not covering a Broncos game, I'm watching, and let's say there's early games on, I'm always watching the Chiefs, not just because they're in the division, or I'm watching Aaron Rodgers. Same with whenever they're a primetime game. That becomes, my wife knows that Broncos, obviously it's work. Cowboys, they get to be on the big TV. Otherwise, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football might be on an iPad while we're watching whatever show. But if Aaron Rodgers or Mahomes are on, she understands they're on the big TV. So Mahomes is 1, and then Russell Wilson has to be 2. Justin Herbert's talent is unquestioned, but he also hasn't gone to the playoffs in 2 years, despite having pretty good talent. I know he's had 2 head coaches already in 2 years, but the injuries on that roster have always seemingly plagued the Chargers for the last 6-7 years, going back to the Phillip Rivers, the last 5 years of his career, whatever. But I think that you have to put Herbert at the highest third. The question is, do you like how polished Derek Carr is now, or Herbert? And so it's kind of it's a multi-tiered question. Who would you take right now if you were starting a brand new franchise in St. Louis? They give you an expansion draft and you get to pick either Carr or Herbert. I think you have to take Herbert because of his age, but Carr's only 30, 31. He's not 35. So I think it's a long conversation to the AFC West is now unquestioned the best quarterback division in football. And while the NFC West may have been the best division in football last year, I think it was. You saw Jimmy Garoppolo. You weren't sure what Stafford was. Russ, I thought, would get Seattle to the playoffs. And Kyler Murray is fantastic when he's healthy and his mind's right. But now the AFC West has the 4 best quarterbacks of any division. And I don't know if you disagree with my ranking. I guess I'd throw it back to you. But Russell Wilson has the 9 Pro Bowls, has the passing numbers, the completion percentage, and, of course, the Super Bowl ring. Yeah. Dan Patrick actually had a good poll too, Joe. Who gets the second ring first? It was Stafford, Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson.
It's tough just because you got to see what the teams are going to do for that. I mean, right now I guess we haven't figured out what the deals are, what the details are of the Aaron Rodgers deal, so we don't know how much money the Packers are going to have. The Broncos still do probably have some holes to fill around that team, and I think from there, I'm going to go Mahomes. I think Mahomes.
It feels like the safest bet, even though the Rams just won, right?
Well, I mean, the Rams, they have no draft picks. They have all kinds of money that they're going to have to let guys go or not re-sign guys. So, yeah, that team's not built to repeat like the Chiefs were for so many years.
Yeah, and the Chiefs, I think, as long as Mahomes is there, will be in the conversation. It reminds me exactly of really what we have seen with Aaron Rodgers, although at times Green Bay's taken a step back, but even more so Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and what they gave you, where every year you penciled them in for 10 wins for sure, and a lot of years it was 12 and 13 wins, and you knew that they would, certainly with what Brady did, win a playoff game or be into the second round a whole lot and play in a whole lot of championship games. There's no reason to think the Chiefs, even as they'll continue to turn their roster over and guys will get older, Tyreek Hill is going to get older and slow down at some point. Same with Travis Kelce, but they aren't yet. And they just fill in those other ancillary pieces. The O-line will probably always be shuffling around, although they drafted really well with those 2 guys inside, and they're going to franchise Orlando Brown. So I don't know what they'll be defensively. I think Patrick is kind of at times his own biggest enemy, right? We saw that on the field last year, and a willingness to to just take what the defense gives you rather than trying to make big plays. But that, if I had to go lay a bet down right now, and we can bet here legally, I think, can you in Missouri now too, right?
Illinois. So I'm on the Illinois side, and we can here in
Illinois side you
Illinois.
can, and I think in
Yeah.
Kansas it's coming, but so Missouri's bookended by
Missouri
it, right?
will probably be like the 49th or 50th state to legalize gambling,
Well,
unless the Royals and the Cardinals and the Chiefs all have a nice little sit down with
and
some
maybe
folks and get that pushed ahead.
Maybe they will, but every state keeps making money. I think we did 500 or 600 million in January in Colorado on it. But if I was betting, it's a long way to get to. If I was betting, I would bet on Mahomes. But the Broncos roster is in pretty good shape, especially on defense. So it won't surprise me. We've seen a new quarterback go to a good team the last 2 years. They got to play at home in the Super Bowl, which is just kind of coincidence. But with Tom Brady in Tampa and now Stafford in LA, it won't blow my mind if the Broncos end up winning a Super Bowl in Russell's first year, certainly in the next couple of years before the Chiefs might get there. But it's a fun question because the answer doesn't feel wrong. You can almost justify any of the four answers and not feel bad about your answer.
Yeah.
Well, so, hey, but back to your question.
Yeah.
Who ranked the four AFC West quarterbacks from your point of view? Obviously a few miles away down I-70.
Yeah, I'm going Mahomes number 1, Wilson number 2. I'm going Carr number 3, just because Herbert has not made the playoffs yet. I think until he proves that, then he goes above Carr. So I think that's my ranking for those four.
Yeah, and Carr's leadership, right? Look what he was able to do last year with all the mess that they had between obviously Gruden, Rich Bisaccia coming in, having never been a head coach, certainly well liked, and then the tragedy with Ruggs, and then the corner from Arnett from Ohio State, the first rounder, right, and all of his BS and Waller out a good chunk of the year, 6, 8, 10 games, something like that. I think 6 or 8 games to get into the playoffs and to play well in the playoffs. I mean, if they would have given him a fifth quarter, he might have come back and beaten the Bengals. And he got into the playoffs a couple of years ago with Houston. He just obviously was hurt in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, Brandon, thank you so much for jumping on here. By the way, you brought back memories of live betting the home run derby back in.
Yeah,
I was in Colorado. I was able to sit there on my phone and just make the dumbest live bets.
So that's
home run derby.
No, that's the funniest thing, right? So I've got a buddy in LA, and he sends me bets that we split, and we'll do these same game parlays, and they're goofy bets, right? You bet on 10 or 11 things to happen, but you bet $5, and you might win 2,300, which we did once this year, and we won 1,700. And so we split that, and that's been fun. But like I flew to Arizona for a weekend. The Broncos were in Dallas, and I wasn't traveling. We didn't travel this year as a broadcast. So I went to Arizona for the weekend with my wife. Fun fact, Michael Jordan was staying in our hotel. It was the NASCAR race, final weekend in NASCAR. That was cool. But I was able to make all the bets I would normally make. And then went to New York to visit my sister when the Broncos played the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. And in New York, you couldn't bet yet, but she lived in Jersey. So I was able to Sunday morning get all the bets in that I needed to. But then Super Bowl Sunday, I actually had to plan before I got on a plane on Tuesday and get all my bets. And I'm sitting in the airport, like on the plane, finishing my Super Bowl bets on the Tuesday before the Super Bowl, because I knew I couldn't get them in when I got to LA yet. It's a nice luxury to have. And more states obviously are allowing you to bet legally, which has been good. Indiana last week when I was there for the combine, I was able to look at some of the stuff I wanted to bet on and actually place any bets, but it was nice to be able to know I had the option.
I've told the story on this show before, but driving from this summer, I ran a half marathon in Mount Rushmore, and then the next day ran one in Omaha, Nebraska. So the whole way from South Dakota to Omaha, Nebraska, you're driving through Iowa, where you can place bets. And there were times like you were so close to the river, it would tell you that you were in the wrong state and you couldn't. Sure. So it's like anytime it would be like, okay, I can bet on the Cardinal game. I can do that because I knew once I got into Omaha and then into Missouri the next day, I knew nothing. I was locked out from it. So I was hugging that state border the whole way, throwing out stupid bets.
Yeah. That's what my buddy told me. So the same friend that I bet with in LA, he's from outside of Philly. So he's a Philly guy, but you can bet legally in Pennsylvania. He lives in Wilmington, is where his family is. So he would literally drive to the closest tower where it thought he was in. So he's still in Delaware technically, but the phone thinks he's in Pennsylvania, and he could make bets those couple times he visited his folks around the holidays. And he said it was so different. He goes, but then I didn't involve you as much.
Yeah, you are going. I mean, I think it happened a lot last year. Busch Stadium is right on the river, right there on the river. I mean, you literally could walk across the river to place your bets for a Cardinal game and then walk right back. I mean, it'll take you 20 minutes.
Sure.
To do that. It's crazy how that works. And one of these days they'll get it all figured out and everybody will make all kinds of money off of it.
It'd be interesting to track how many folks from Missouri in the summertime or any time of the year on an NFL Sunday drive over to Illinois, throw a bunch of bets in, and then drive back. Like how many folks that live in Missouri are gambling and winning money in Illinois? And I'm sure Illinois can track that data to some degree. If they can find Calvin Ridley betting on games in Florida, they can certainly find out how many Missouri residents are just going across the state line to make bets on, I would think mostly NFL Sundays, but really any time of the year. And then that should be all that the folks who are whatever down on the idea of it, get them to come around. You're like, look at all this lost revenue that we just gave to Illinois for no reason.
We appreciate it. We less potholes over here in
Fingers
Illinois.
Crossed.
Hey, Brandon, thank you so much, man. Until our paths cross again, I appreciate the time.
Absolutely, Joe. Talk to you soon. Thanks for having me.